God bless you, everyone. This is Glory Be to God, Mighty God Ministries, episode 6. And this episode right here, we're going to go over, this is a long time ago. And this is one of those things, again, what not to do. I mean, like I said, I believe in God because I know if it wasn't for Him, I could say it time and time again, that I would be not in this chair. I'd be in a coffin somewhere. I'd be in the ground. I'd be in the dirt. But because He is so good, He has saved me so many times. And this is not something, obviously the Bible says, do not test the Lord my God. So I'm not saying go do these things. Please do not do these. Learn from my lessons. I can tell you these stories because they're true and real and I did them, but learn from these to take the things that I learned in 42 years and take the things that I'm telling you and then do the opposite. Because a lot of these I did just because, it was either I didn't know any better, I thought it was cool at the time, because, you do different things in life and, and you're searching for these things. You're searching for, all the things, the worldly things that are fun. It's a bunch of trash. Again, it's a bunch of lies from the devil, but you're searching whether it's for fame, women, drugs, alcohol, money, quick burst of excitement, that last a little bit and then they're gone, and then the next thing you know, you got to get that excitement again and then it's gone. It's a quick fix. And the only way you can get everlasting fix forever is through God. When you clean yourself out, the Holy Spirit cleans you out, He will come inside of you and you will have a peace and love like no other. And I cannot explain it, but it is the best thing that has ever happened in my entire life. Better than anything, other than maybe being saved by Jesus when I took Jesus into my heart. It is the best thing. And we're going to get on to the story because this is a good story. Again, what not to do. I started going out, I don't know if I was 16 years old or 17 years old. I think I started going to the bars. At the time I was young, but I always looked older. And I was able to grow facial hair because I'm Italian. I was able to grow facial hair pretty quickly. So I always had either a mustache or a goatee. So, back then that was like what was it? 90s, 2000s, maybe 90s, late 90s, early 2000s. I look like I was older. I can't remember. We'll tell this another story, but obviously, like everyone else, a lot of kids gets fake IDs, which obviously you shouldn't be doing that. But that was something we had also. But I used to go to the bars when I was young, and I wouldn't go and get hammered and that kind of stuff, but I may have go 1 or 2 drinks or something like that, have some wings. Back then you could get wings for they were 5-cent wings or 10-cent wings. I don't even know what they are now. I haven't been to a bar I couldn't tell you the last time. I stay out of them because I know what happens at them, and although you can have some fun at them, majority of the stuff that happens at them are not maybe the best of things. Again, but I get it. Trust me, I had my time where I was doing those kinds of things. And that was always, that's a learning lesson. But again, if you can learn the easy way and not the hard head way like I learned, that's definitely the better way to go. So I had been in the bars forever. And to be truly honest with you, I mean, I'm trying to think what age I started drinking or had my first drink. I can't even remember. But you know what? In reality, when you drink, what you realize is, at least down the road, is that alcohol really doesn't taste good. And I know people say, oh, this is the best beer, a cold beer on a summer day. And, it tastes okay, but it's really not that good for you. It doesn't really taste that good. The reason why you drink and do a lot of things, reality, and it's, again, it's lies from the devil. But the truth is, a lot of times you're doing it, to numb your pain, to numb sadness. You're upset about things, so you drown your sorrows in alcohol. Or like me, and I'm going to be blunt, I was a coward, back then when I was young, I thought I was a tough guy and stuff, but I was a coward. One of the reasons I started drinking because, like a lot of guys, and I'm sure you can relate, maybe you can't, but you have a hard time talking to women. And when you're young and dumb, at the time, and you want to get girls or at least get relationships, those types of things. A lot of guys have a hard time talking to women, and it's this vice versa. You know, it's the same thing for a lot of girls. They can have a hard time talking to guys. So you're in the same boat, but you don't realize it. So a lot of times you drink to take the edge off, or whatever you want to call it, and that's not good. You know, that's another lie from the devil. You know, you realize later on in life, you never needed that. You know, it was just one of those things that the devil sits on your shoulder and wants to kill, steal, and destroy. So you go out and you drink and you get that little edge. But then, like any other thing you do, you get past a certain limit where you're not in control. And when you look at the decisions you make, at least I know in my life, when you get past that limit, you're not in control anymore. And you forget half the stuff you do. You do a lot of dumb stuff. Most of the time, no one gets hurt, and you can laugh about the next night. But there's times you do some bad things and stupid things, and people do get hurt. So you have to be really careful with that. But I am going to get into the story now. That's the motto is obviously now it's funny, I haven't had a beer for probably 2 years or something like that, maybe 3. I don't even know, and I really could care less because it doesn't. It's not like it used to be. I don't care. It just doesn't matter anymore. But when I was young, that was you think you're cool and everything that comes along with it. And it's just a lie. But anyways, back to the story. We're going to call this Jimmy's Bar because I don't want to get anyone in any kind of trouble. Not that they would be in trouble, because honestly, I believe all the people that were even involved, I think most of them are passed away. They're not even around anymore, so it wouldn't matter. But I'm not going to use real names just out of respect of all the people, because a lot of these people were like me. They're good people, just like you are too. But a lot of times we're misguided. We're looking for the answers in the wrong places, and because of that, we do things that we shouldn't be doing, or we look for it in things that we're not going to find them in. But until you realize it, like I said, if you're a hardhead like me growing up, sometimes you learn the hard way. Luckily, luckily in most situations it worked out okay. And again, I had an angel praying over me, my parents, and our different grandparents. Somebody was praying over me, because there's so many times where, that I would not be here. But anyways, this is about, I was 22, 23 years old maybe. So I'm semi, adult, but really not, and, we get introduced to this guy, and we're going to call him Jimmy. And he was a nice guy. He really was. I liked him. He was fun to hang out with. He was a cook. He used to make some of the best food, and he could make it with anything. If it didn't have to have a full kitchen setup and all that. You could take a plug-in electric little burner thing that you put on a pan, and he can make the best food out of it. He was a cook. He also was a construction and carpentry worker, and he was really good at that. And he was an Italian guy, so he was a good talker. I'm not going to say the word I used to use, but I want to say he was a good talker. He could tell all these different stories, and we used to have such a great time. But what ended up happening is, I forget if he was working or if he was on disability at the time. I can't remember. But we meet him, and we were hanging out at a different location on bar, and he's cooking there. And we start hanging out there, drinking, eating and stuff, and his food's great. So we start talking to him. Then he gets a location. And the location is in Youngstown, and again, I'm not going to say it doesn't really matter. It's a long time ago. The location is in Youngstown, and it's a little small place in between it's probably like a building with like 5 mini buildings in it, but they're all connected, but there's dividers in between them. So there's front and back doors to go in and out of them. And then some of them have the old school like cellars that you go underneath them, to get in the basements. But he's in one that is 2 down. So there's 5 there, and on the left-hand side is the front main store, and then there's one in the middle. So what was happening is we would go and hang out there, and that was like the smaller one where you could only fit like, maybe like 5 to 10 people, and I think there was some woodworking stuff in the thing, and then there was a bar, and there was enough for like, I don't know, was there a bathroom? I don't even know if there was a bathroom in the place. But, he would cook, and, they'd sell alcohol out of the place and different things like that. And it was a good place. And let's just call it again, it's Jimmy's Bar. You'd go to Jimmy's Bar and hang out. So then, like, there'd be a couple people, like 3 or 4 people. And at the time, when you think about it, I don't know what any of us were thinking, even him. We were all thing, but I think I don't know if it just, we didn't care or what. But, it was just one of those dumb things you do. But it was cool because you're, like I said, I'm 23 years old. Again, the devil. Oh, yep, you're cool. 23 years old, hanging out with these people, and, we're BSing and telling stories. And it, like I said, it was a good time. Most people that went there were good people. But one of the problems is it got bigger. And so they got the building next to it. So basically that same building, but the front store, which is a little bit bigger. Now it's a bigger place. And now it's got bathrooms. So it's got 2 bathrooms. It doesn't have a kitchen. So, it doesn't have an Ansel system or all this stuff that they have today and all the regulations and rules you're supposed to have when you open a restaurant bar. It's got nothing, right? But we're still running it out of here. And I think we went, there was a couple of us guys that went in with Jimmy. We all put in a little bit of money, not a huge amount, but a little bit. And we all called it our bar or something like that. It was still Jimmy's bar, but we used to say, "Oh yeah, come down to our bar," and we'd sit there and hang out, and then people from the neighborhood would come in and tell stories, and it was just, it was a good time. No one was really getting hurt in the place. No one was doing really anything shady or really bad. Obviously, the only problem we ran into, it was an illegal bar, because we never could get the permit. You need a liquor license permit. You have to file all this paperwork, and it's like $10,000 or something like that, $15,000. And they're really hard to get. You can't just go get them. You have to go through all this process, and then you have to vote on it and do all this stuff. And it was always supposed to be where there was a guy who owned another building, and he was supposed to get the license, or he was going to have the license, and we were going to be able to use it under that name, but it never panned out. So essentially, we're, operating this place illegally without a license, and then there's a kitchen and stuff. Not a kitchen, but we're doing it. So there's like, there's coolers, because we don't have a big walk-in cooler like you'd have, because it's a rented place. And then at the time there's liquor bottles, whatever we were selling. I don't remember. But the food was phenomenal. Like I said, Jimmy could cook, and the food that he made was phenomenal. It could be, hot dog, chili dogs, and he made the best chili dogs. He made pasta and sauce and everything. And then this place was awesome, because again, the other place next door didn't even have bathrooms. This place had two beautiful bathrooms with the nice toilets. What were they called back then? I forget what they were, the Cub Cadet or whatever the toilets were, where you could flush like 30 golf balls down them, in the commercial. And it was a good place, because you get people hang out and tell stories and stuff. But all good things come to an end, obviously, because people would see the cars coming in and out of the parking lot in the back. And I don't know if the neighbors called a couple times. It was never really loud or anything. We didn't have music blaring or anything, but obviously it was you couldn't say it was a store. I don't know if they thought there was running drugs out of it. I think maybe someone before who had it, I don't know if they were running guns out of it, or I don't know what they were doing, but there was something that happened with the previous place. We weren't doing anything technically. Yeah, it was illegal. It was illegal. So yeah, we were, but we weren't doing anything to hurt anybody, as far as we weren't doing drugs or guns or anything like that. We were, selling food out of the place and selling alcohol, and it was wrong. There's no doubt about it. Again, the whole channel is to glorify God, so it was wrong. We shouldn't have done it. But it was a time in our life. You're 23 years old, and you're not thinking. It's just stupid. But it was a good time. It was a good learning experience. I learned a lot of stuff just, talking to people, communicating, telling stories and that kind of stuff, serving people, because a lot of this stuff you might, obviously if you work in a restaurant, you're going to learn this stuff, but I never worked in a restaurant, at least not like long time, or I might have tried it like once or twice, but I didn't have a job as it. But we would do that, and then we'd run across the street, because obviously we weren't going down to get the alcohol from like the liquor store normally. We would go wherever we had to get it. So if we ran out of wine Yeah, I used to run across the street to go get the wine. So we'd get like combo Bosso wine, the biggest jug we could buy, and then we'd run across the street to the convenience store, get whatever we needed, whatever we could get, and then we'd bring it back and we'd sell it by the glass or whatever it was. And then the same thing with beer or alcohol or liquor and stuff. But it was, again, it was a time in my life that, it was dumb. Again, don't do this. It's learn the lessons from my story here, not to do these things. But it was a fun, it was a fun time. And like I said, there was a lot of good people, a lot of good stories going around. Most of the people that came in there were, like I said, genuinely nice people and good. You get a couple people that come in, where you run around, what are you doing in here? Because you didn't really, there wasn't a sign out front that said Jimmy's Bar, pop in, So a lot of the people were local people or people that knew it was there, and but it was a good time. And I don't know how many of us were involved in it. Maybe there was 3 or 4 people. There was a couple bartenders that would bartend, they'd pay them a couple bucks, or I forget what Jimmy paid them. A couple bucks here and there to do it. But, they weren't no one was making a living off of it. It was just, a time. But like I said, Jimmy would tell these stories, man, of back in the day. And if you were into those, which a lot of people are, if you're from the Youngstown area and you know different stories and things, it's just, it's a good time because everyone from this area, the great thing about it, it's a melting pot. So you get different nationalities, different languages, different stories, whether it's stories from when people were in the war, or whether it's that something that happened that day, or what was going on down the street. It was just a great time. And I was young. Like I said, I'm 23 years old. I've done a lot of stupid things already. Again, I should have been a goner, but I'm still learning stuff. And but it was just it was a good learning experience. Again, not the right way to learn. Obviously, there's better ways to go about it. Don't do this kind of stuff. But one of the things that happened is I was there quite a bit because I just loved being there. And honestly, if I didn't work there or even help out, I probably would have just hung out there just to hear the stories and stuff because it was just a good time. But in retrospect, looking back, it was just another one of those bad decisions. Shouldn't have done it. Didn't really make sense. But again, the timing, someone was praying for me or something, because what ended up happening is eventually all things you do, and let this be a lesson to everyone, when you do illegal things, if you haven't done them already and don't do them. But if you do illegal things, what you'll find out is, and you'll either learn the hard way, or maybe you'll get out before you learn the hard way, which hopefully you do, and you turn from your ways. You repent of your sins and turn from your ways. Because what happens is, I don't care what you're doing, whether it's an illegal bar, drugs, whatever you're doing, here's what's going to happen. You are either going to get caught and go to jail. That's number one, what's probably going to happen. Or unfortunately, something bad is going to happen to you. And I don't want that to happen to anybody, but unfortunately, we all know that's what can happen. So those are the 2 things that are going to come out of it, most likely. And hopefully you don't do those things, you don't get involved at all, because they're not the right way. There's way better options out there. So don't do those. But if you do, keep in mind, there's 2 options there. One is going to be jail, most likely. And obviously for this, it's not you're not doing something majorly bad, so be a short time. But still, if you go to jail for a couple of days, that's not fun. No one wants to do that. Or something bad's going to happen to you. So that's one of the 2 options. So learn from this. But what ends up happening is they end up getting busted. The police, I don't know if they sent someone undercover in there. I'm sure they did. Because it wasn't a huge deal. Or one of the neighbors called and someone eventually said something, or one of the people that were coming in there, I don't know, maybe they had an axe to grind against Jimmy and they turned him in. I don't know. But like I said, I don't know how. I don't think that was the case though, because Jimmy was a nice guy. He was funny. He would get a little bit upset sometimes, but he was he was a good guy, and like he was a funny guy, funny Italian guy. I mean, he was it's funny, you forget, and you wish sometimes you remember some of the stories they tell you, because they're so funny and you can't get them back. And like I said, those are the little small things that God gives you. It's not these big things like the cars and the houses and the money. It's the small little stories, the laughs. Those are some of the best times. It's not the money. It's not the cars. It's not the houses and all these other stupid lies from the devil. It's just having the little small things like good stories and good friends to talk to and people to laugh with. Those are some of the best times. But anyways, they did get busted. They got raided, and then the police came in, and I think they I don't know if Jimmy was there at the time, but one of the bartenders was there, and then they got something happened where they got a court case, obviously because there was no liquor license, so selling illegal alcohol and whatever other fines, or whatever they give you for that. I don't remember at the time, but thank God, like I said, someone was praying for me, someone was watching over me, because I wasn't there that day, and or maybe I might have left by that time. I don't know if I was even involved at that time. Maybe I was gone. I don't know, but it was but I was not there at the time when they got raided. And it wasn't a huge thing, like I said, because we weren't doing anything really, horrible, as far as like, we weren't hurting people or doing anything crazy like that. We weren't selling, cocaine off the bar or anything like that. So it wasn't something that was terrible, but it was not, obviously, when we're looking at it, it was not something good to be doing. And there's other ways around it, in retrospect, if we would have sold, even just food and pop out of the place, we didn't even need the alcohol, because the stories would have made it by, you could have just had the food and pop, or did a which at the time I didn't know why we didn't think about it, bring your own beer or something like that. I think that would have been legal. I don't know. You have to check on that, but something like that, we could have done it. And here's the thing, a lot of times the devil makes you think that you can't do things the right way. So then what happens? Just like this story, you do them the wrong way. If you look at people that are, the different things, there's a way we could have made it work. And instead of taking the harder road, that would have probably been better. And honestly, if we would have probably went the right route or built up to it, I bet you God would have prospered all of us, and it would have been great. But the thing is that, if you do it the right way, things will work out for you. If you do it the wrong way, like I said, you're going to get one or two of those options. Maybe it's not going to be that bad, but it's just not, it's not going to work out great, because it's not glorifying God, So that's the story. Maybe if I get down the road, I can get some other people that were also involved, if they'd be willing to talk about it. I don't know if they even remember that, and some of the stories, like I said, that was 23 years ago. A lot of these things are from a long time ago, so we can talk about them now because they're way gone, and half the people involved are gone, unfortunately. Because like I said, Jimmy, and I'm using a different name, but Jimmy was a great guy. After it got shut down, I think he went back to working somewhere as a cook, and we occasionally would see him. But like I said, he was a good guy. He was a good guy. He was funny, and he had all kinds of stories. And he had been a bunch of different places too, so he'd tell us different stories when he was in one place and the other place, and he was just a funny guy, But that's another story, another time. Obviously, like I said, I don't want to glorify these things because they're not good things. But I do want to be honest with you and tell the stories because it's a learning lesson. And like I said, instead of you learning the hard way, you could learn the easy way, learn from my example. And like I said, I lucked out on a lot of these, well, I didn't luck out, because I used to say that, luck out or knock on wood, but that's all a bunch of trash. That's lies from the devil. Someone was praying over me and watching over me. Otherwise, I would have been there too, or maybe I would have. I can't remember if I got out before then. I might have left before then and said, you know what, this is not, because we weren't making, it wasn't like we were making a killing at it or anything. The money wasn't that great. It was honestly, I was probably more doing it just for the stories and hanging out, just because it was a good time. And in later on, you'll find different places like that are illegal, that are legal, and you can go there and hang out and get the same stories, whether it's a VFW, or one of those places you can go and you get, some of the, we'll call them old timers, but those are the best because they have some of the best stories. You talk to those guys, they've been through it all, and they're really good people. They're kind, compassionate, loving, just like Jesus, a lot of them. But that's the story. Again, learn from these lessons, what not to do. Don't chase the crazy things because you're going to end up in one of two places. And I'm sure if you talk to anybody who's been involved in any type of things like that, or back in the day, whenever, drugs, alcohol, chasing those different things, and we all know those lifestyles, or maybe you don't know them, they end in one of two ways. There's obviously a small percentage of people that they get out before things go down, or things work out for them, and God, that's because of God. That's a blessing from God when that happens. And there's some big YouTube people that you could watch their videos and you'll see them, they got out somehow, and that's a blessing from God. That was God that was watching out for them, performing miracles, that kind of stuff. But again, this channel is to glorify God, but I do want to be truthful and tell you, because I can't sit here and say I was a saint and all these things. God changed me in the last probably 3 to 4 years, and that was because I was in a dark place and he pulled me out of that dark place. And now I would, if it was in the past, I would have never got on a channel or done any of this stuff. But now I want to tell these stories, one, to glorify him, and then the other thing is to show you what not to do, because I've been there, done that, and I can tell you what the outcome's going to be. And if it wasn't for God, who I love him more than anyone. Jesus, I love him more than anyone else. I don't care who knows it. I will take it to my grave. You could do whatever you want to me. I don't care. He is stronger than anyone down here. He is stronger than anyone down here. His name is the name above all names. And I'm going to tell stories later. I'm going to tell some stories later on that tells you all the other things I used to do, and I used to think I needed these things. And you got Jesus. Guess what? You don't need any of those things. He'll protect you. You don't need the things you think are going to protect you. And we'll talk about those another time, because I know this one's going a little bit over. But again, if you're not saved or you're unsure, click the more in description button below. Read the salvation prayer below. It is the best thing that you will ever do in your life. I promise you. I've chased all kinds of different things, and it is the best thing you can do. Build a relationship with Jesus and God. I promise you, you will get peace like there's nothing else. You will have a love that you can't find from anything. Not from any drug, any girl, your family, your parents. You will not find a love like that from anything but Jesus. And I promise you, I could sit here and tell you 100%, there is nothing like it. It is like the weight of the world was ripped off of you, and you will have peace. So again, God bless you. Have a good night.